companies have never before had access to so much data, so much technology and expertise. So why are companies still getting their marketing basics so wrong? So today, the real competitive advantage is not in having more information, it's knowing what to ignore. So today's conversation is an important one, and we're so lucky to have two renowned voices here to talk about this very subject. Bruce Millard is an author of a best-selling new book, and I'm going to have him tell you about it. I don't want to spoil it, but I will say Bruce has a rare and valuable perspective on our business because he's helped shape what it is today. Anybody remember Netscape, AOL? He's been part of that, and he's led the industry in making it what it is today, really, all the way up to the arc of AI and the landscape today. And we also have Harry Joyner. He's the founder of a company called E-commerce Recruiter. And Harry is really one of our industry's best known executive recruiters. He's helped companies hire hundreds of marketing and e-com leaders. He sat through thousands and thousands of interviews, I have no doubt. And he's really learned to identify leadership that's going to succeed on the job versus what is going to fail. So while Bruce has spent his career helping organizations make really good marketing decisions, Harry spent his time evaluating the people who make those decisions. So welcome to Retail OCD. We're retail operators who spent our careers inside of retail, and we're still obsessed with it. I'm Deanne Campbell, founder of StoreWise, with 20 plus years of store design, technology integration, and omni operations through the customer experience lens.
And I'm Barney Stacher. I'm co-host here with Deanne. I'm the Chief Conversation Officer at Retail OCD, helping facilitate these great conversations between people like Bruce and Harry. I like to be at the crossroads of technology and human beings at retail, and Bruce and Harry are certainly there. So Bruce, take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the book, and then we'll jump to whatever prompts.
Sure. So hi, great to see all of you today. I appreciate you coming out and having me on. I'm Bruce Millard. I am a fractional CMO working across multiple different businesses currently. I'm former CMO of Empire Today and former of Big Lots and former of Safelite and several other places, and have had a great retail career. More recently, in the last, let's say 10 years, I would say that no one's ever hired me when things are going well. I have the opportunity to go in and fix a lot of marketing. And what I found to be is that is what I really enjoy, is going and fixing the problem. After a year or two of fixing the problem and getting the machine running, it becomes a little less exciting for me. So that's what I've really focused on in the last couple of years, is really going and fixing bad marketing.
That's great. Harry, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you and Bruce know each other.
So I'm a simple man with a simple value proposition. I'm a contingency-based e-commerce recruiter. I'm an inch wide and a mile deep in that. I charge my clients 20% of a candidate's first-year base salary if and only if they make the hire. So if they don't make a hire, no money changes hands. So when I was a kid, my dad used to say, gunslingers don't get paid by the bullet. So that's pretty much the story of my life. That's all I do, is I'm an e-commerce recruiter. And I met Bruce many years ago when he was at Abbott Labs, and I was trying to recruit him because he was an A player, and I'm like a drug sniffing dog when it comes to e-commerce talent. And a lot of the roads led to Bruce, and I found him to be phenomenal. And so we've been friends ever since. He's a follower of my LinkedIn feed. I follow his, and it ain't complicated.
No, it's really not complicated, is it, Harry? It's as you said, you're an inch wide and a mile deep. And so you know who to go to, how to find them, as you said, sniff them out. And it's great that you've made that relationship and connection.
Yeah, let me just jump in there for a little bit. Harry's a little humble. Harry is the best e-commerce recruiter on the planet and one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. I can't tell you the number of people that have started job searches I've introduced Harry to, who he's taking time out of his day to go and help them figure out what they need to do next, which is invaluable, from especially looking at it from his seat.
Yeah, and I'll concur, because I've had that experience myself with Harry, having spoken with him a number of years back and connected on LinkedIn, and his input has always been invaluable.
That's because I was unemployed and broke.
Hey, you know,
I've had my teeth kicked in. So when somebody's looking for a job, which is a, bullshit process, and it's designed to flatten out everybody's differentiation, and, you're trying to compare one person, everything that's unique and valuable about you. They try and flatten it out and compare you to every other person. It's kind of dehumanizing. So I hate that. And I have a lot of sympathy, and my heart goes out to job seekers really trying. So,
Well, it really is. And I think that's part of why companies are making bad decisions today. In part, it's that overwhelming amount of AI data out there and the ability, the perception, I guess, of making decisions and having that data instantly. And it really is, you're both seeing two sides of it. Harry, you from the recruiting side and the job application side, and Bruce, you from the marketing side. And I don't know if you can speak a little bit to that. And Bruce, is probably one of the main reasons that brought you to write the book. It's just the bullshit out there that you have to cut through. And Harry, you're probably feeling that from the perspective of the job seeker, of having to cut through that same kind of bullshit too.
And thank
I
you.
can say that on air.
Yeah.
Good.
Actually, the title of the book is Cutting Through the Bullshit, a marketing leader's guide to surviving and thriving in chaos, which pretty much describes my career. And one of the things I've seen again and again, and as a fractional, I've been a new CMO as a fractional CMO probably 10 times in the last 5 years. And then I sat in a couple of full-time seats, one with Empire, one with Big Lots. I got sucked in largely for health insurance, honestly, but I got sucked back into the full-time world. But the lessons keep repeating. And that is, companies believe their own bullshit way too often. They had this inertia and momentum that is tough to get past and tough to say, stop. This doesn't make any sense. This is not how our customers talk. This is not what they're thinking of. You're not answering their questions. And that's a big reason I wrote the book. I've always wanted to write a book. I wrote the book. I got it done. If I sold no copies, I'd be thrilled. And luckily, I've had some success in selling copies, which is awesome. But the real reason is that I'm at a point in my career where I could afford to take the gloves off and say it like it is without having any ramifications whatsoever. If nobody wants to work with me ever again, that's okay.
Yeah,
but I'm going to tell it like it is.
That's the best part of being self-employed, is you can say what you want. And yeah, hopefully, I mean, I've worked with you many times. You're hard on the issue and soft on the people.
100%.
But, a lot of companies do a lot of really stupid things. And it's hard sometimes not to say something about it. So
to that point, Harry, what are some of the stupidest things that companies do when they're trying to identify a fit for a role like what Bruce is writing about?
My philosophy, so I'm self-taught as a recruiter. There's a lot to learn, but I'm a former commodity trader. So as recruiters go, I like to say I'm not from around here. I have been on the phone 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year for 21 years with people like Bruce and Barney, and I've learned to see the business through their eyes. Incredibly smart, incredibly business oriented, incredibly analytical people. And when I work a search, I get called by about 150 entrepreneurs a year. So just to paint a picture. So my target market is a DTC online retailer, B2B too, but it's mostly D2C online retailers between $5 and $75 million in sales. So why is it that? Well, because less than $5 million in sales, they don't have enough money to pay me. And more than 75 million in sales, and they usually have somebody like me on their team. So my sweet spot is between 5 and 75 million. And these are typically very growth-oriented companies. And a lot of times the person who reaches out to me, because they're looking for an e-commerce recruiter, right? I mean, it's kind of like nobody wants to use an e-commerce recruiter, but when you need an e-commerce recruiter, you go to Google, right? And you Google e-commerce recruiter. And a lot of times I'm there. I've got some work to do in AEO, but just humor me for a second. So traditionally I was there if you Googled e-commerce recruiter, and then people would bounce over to LinkedIn and they would read some of my content and so on and so forth. Then they would call me. And so by the time I got on the phone with them, it would always occur to me that there's really 2 job openings, right? They say your business strategy should be your exit strategy. Paint me a picture of what that, and usually they're like, well, I don't know. They have no clue. Because nobody has ever asked them. A lot of my questions I got from people like Bruce. So Bruce is over there nodding, and so to somebody at Bruce's level, it makes perfect sense. But there aren't a lot of recruiters that speak that language. And so I get a lot of searches, and I work with a lot of $5 to $75 million companies because they have a very business oriented approach to the search.
And similarly, the clients I typically work with on a fractional basis are a little bit different. They're typically between $20 million and $500 million in sales. And the reason being is that they're large enough to have a dedicated marketing function, but small enough to have screwed it up at some point. But they're also small enough that you can right the ship. I worked for some big companies. Harry referenced Abbott. I worked for Abbott for 6 or 7 years. Trying to right that ship was tremendously hard because it has a whole lot of organizational momentum that is going in not a great place necessarily. It's a great company, don't get me wrong, but it's just that trying to steer that ship is like trying to steer the Titanic with a trolling motor. It's not going to have a lot of impact.
Yeah, that right sizing for the role, and Harry, that dose of reality check to make sure that they're the right client for you and that they really understand what they need so that you can deliver on that rather than on what they don't need.
Well, does that mean, and this references both the marketing side and the recruiting side, the hiring side, I guess, are companies spending too much time talking to themselves and not out there in the field checking reality and talking to users, customers, out there talking to manufacturers, to people in the supply chain to find out what is actually going on versus what is going on?
The echo chamber is real. 100%. Take a look. Here's something. Go to a company that you know, go to their website, find the FAQs. They'll have FAQs somewhere on the site. Read the FAQs and ask yourself, would any customer ask that question? And I'm going to say 90% of the answers are going to be no. Because they're the questions that marketing want to answer and customer service want to answer, but they're not the hard questions that customers are actually going to ask.
That's a brilliant insight. Go right to the page where they think they are answering the consumer question.
Oh, you've just described every FAQ list I think I've ever
100%.
seen.
Everyone they've ever seen over the last 30 years. We're not going to answer the tough questions because it's too awkward. I was like, okay. But it 100%, there's so much work needs to be done to go and listen to the customers to understand. And it can be going out and reading Reddit, it can be going out and reading reviews, it can be going out and doing a lot of different things to understand what the customer's point of view is. But if you don't do that fundamental step, you'll end up talking to yourself and not to the customer and not having the impact you can have.
A big part of my work is in finding hidden friction points and opportunities in stores. And it's amazing to me how much, I call it store blindness, how much of that occurs in stores. It's obvious to anybody with half a brain what's going on, but they don't see it. Why do you think people who own these companies don't go out in the field often enough to see these things? Why does leadership have so much trouble going out into the field to talk to their people, to find these things out firsthand?
I'll take a swing at it, and Harry, please jump in. I would say people are confusing activity with accomplishment. And I think that with so many companies, the meeting culture is so stacked. You're back to back for 8 or 9 hours a day, every day in meetings. Getting out to go actually see voice of customer, going and see how the customer shops your store is just a nuisance. You don't have the time for it. And I saw this when I was at Big Lots, and I saw this a little bit on Empire today, going on the ride-alongs and being able to actually see how a customer actually interacts with you is hugely educational.
Bruce, when you come in as a fractional, what's the first thing that you're looking for? You're looking for a top line improvement or a bottom line fix?
Typically looking for what would make the biggest impact in the shortest period of time. I just delivered a marketing assessment for one of my PE-owned clients and looked at everything doing front to back. And I rank everything by level of impact and level of difficulty actually to get it done. And so that's how I'm typically coming to market is what are the things I can do that are high impact, low effort, that are going to prove that this is the right roadmap, and it gives them the confidence to actually keep going.
You're putting together your own Gartner quadrant, as it were.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Harry, do you think that when you're looking for people to hire, can great marketers succeed without understanding operations at all? I know in the past, typically these have been very siloed departments. Do you think that can continue on today, or do these silos have to come down? And are you seeing that happen?
Me personally, I think they have to understand operations. I think they have to understand every aspect of the business model. right? And they have to understand the customer, right? So there's an affinity issue with the customer. Who are they? Where are they? How do they think? How do they buy? What do they fear? What makes them mad? What are their top 3 daily frustrations? Is there a built-in bias to the way they make decisions, logic versus emotion? You want to put yourself in the emotional bond business with that customer, because customers have more options now than ever. And given the increasing incidence of bots now hitting sites, there's a pretty good chance that half your traffic in the future is going to come from bots. And so the opportunity to put yourself in the emotional bond business with that customer is paramount. And so you want to figure out, like, well, why does the customer do business with us? And it's that Japanese, I think it's Toyota or Honda 5 whys rubric. You can Google it, but it's like you say something and it's like, well, why? And then you give the answer and then it's like, well, why? And then you give the answer, why? And so 5 versions of that: wash, rinse, repeat, why? And you get to the bottom of it. And it's like, if somebody says they want to be $100 million business, that implies that the customers will love you that much. And it's like, well, okay, so are we doing 80% of our business with the top 20% of our customers? Why? If we take a $50 million business, and let's say the 80-20 rule applies, right? So we're doing, basically what you're saying there is that you've got a $40 million business with 80-20, with 20% of your customers, right? And a $20 million business. Is my math wrong? You've got a $40 million, $10 million business with most of your customers, and a $40 million business with 20% of your customers. Well, okay, so that would imply that the average order value is significantly higher, or the order frequency is significantly higher, or both. Why is that? And you want to sell to them the way they buy. And I mean, it sounds like I had a partner in my business for a long time, Alan Seibert, who's an e-commerce recruiter. So we used to refer to this idea that people would start anywhere, finish anywhere as SAFA. We would call it SAFA, S-A-F-A, start anywhere, finish anywhere. So someone would start on Amazon and they would end up on Walmart. Or they would start on Amazon and bounce over to Walmart. They didn't see what they wanted to, or, they didn't buy it for whatever reason at Walmart, then they would buy it at a Target. Like, the brand doesn't care. The brand just wants them to buy and feel better about themselves because of their relationship with the brand. Well, suppose I'm a CMO and I know all of that, and the constraints that are preventing me from being an emotional bond business are on the back end of the business. Right now, all of a sudden, it's incumbent upon me to make my numbers, to go, politic that with the COO and speak to her in KPIs that she understands. It's like, listen, lady, you're not going to make your bonus, right, if I can't do what I need to do. So we need to negotiate this out. You have the same conversation with the CFO or the chief legal officer or whomever.
Yeah.
So, not to be long-winded about it, but yeah, you have to understand the entire business to understand where the opportunities for growth are, because they're going to come from anywhere these days.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, the customer only experiences your brand holistically. They don't experience the marketing separately, then the operations separately, then customer service separately, then sales, whatever. It is holistically. So you don't understand the full gambit of what is happening in the experience. Then you're going to make a promise, and then someone else is going to break that promise for you, and you're going to end up damaging your brand instead of helping it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's true. And your cost per lead and cost per sale is going to go up and all of that, but you'll be penalized because of the negative ratings and reviews. It's, the hip bone's connected to the bone. These things are all interrelated.
There has been a trend to putting the marketing department, have it report up through either IT or an operations department leader. Is that something that has legs, or is that just a very isolated incident in specific organizations? Are you seeing that happen more often? And because of what you just said?
Who gets that? I was going to deflect that to Bruce. Bruce, what do you?
Harry, actually, you're posting about it not too long ago, I think. Would you take a job if it was reporting to the head of operations as opposed to CEO? And my answer was no.
My answer to that is no as well, because, well, here's the math. You want some math? Here's the math behind it. So there are 5 shareholder value levers. I work with a lot of private equity firms, and the 5 shareholder value levers are growth, efficiency, cash flow, capital optimization, using more debt, cheaper debt, what have you, and then exit value, right? Your business strategy should be your exit strategy. Don't build it if you can't sell it. So if I'm the CMO, I want to sell more stuff to more people more often for more money in a resource-friendly, brand accretive way that helps the customer feel better about herself because of her relationship with the brand. How many times do you think I've said that? Oh, like a gazillion. That's what I want. Well, if I'm reporting to the chief operating officer and her KPIs are oriented towards efficiency, then all of a sudden there's a conflict there.
100%.
I want to grow, and I don't want to grow in a way that, I don't want blinders or a bridle on or any of that. I want to be able to just run.
My goal as a marketer is put a strain, not heartache, but put a strain on operations and force them to grow.
That actually is really smart. Put a strain on operations, by the way, that doesn't mess up ratings and reviews. Yeah, you want to run it as hot as possible. And this is the thing too, and I'm going to get Bruce to comment on this, is that all marketers, especially the fractional ones, who are amazing, but it's like fractional, Bruce weigh in here in a second. It was like a 3 to 6 month thing usually. For a full-time W-2 person, the average tenure is about 3 years. So you're dealing with marketers who come in, it's like a SWAT team, right? They're putting out the fire, they're solving the problem, they're straightening things up, and then they're leaving.
Yeah.
So they want to do reputation enhancing work that helps them get the job they want after. And that means growth. And so they can't grow unless the rest of the organization is running hot. So they come in, plug and play, and they want to run hot. If there's any sort of political thing on the back end that prevents them from doing that, there's just going to be friction in the organization. Bruce, what do you think?
Yeah, my typical engagement is 3 to 12 months long, typically in the 6-month range. And really, it's a go in and fix the problem. As I mentioned earlier, no one hires me when things are going well. So go in and fix the problem, rebuild things, bring in the right talent and build the team, and then recruit my replacement and bring in the full-time marketing person that can take this and operate it and optimize the heck out of it.
Yeah.
And really put the company in a much better place. And I have built some really strong long-term relationships with CEOs because of that. And they keep coming back to me and asking questions or asking me to come back and consult because things have gone off the rails, what have you. But I just want them to do well. That's all.
Well, to that, you talked about friction. Do you think that marketers are focusing too much on convenience and frictionless for the customer and not enough on experience? Or do you think they're focusing too much on experience and not enough on convenience? Everybody's talking about frictionless, seamless. I hate that word seamless, by the way. Do you think that customers want more of a good customer experience versus having the ease and the speed these days?
I think the marketers tend to focus on the part of the experience that they own and try to make that as frictionless as possible. And then they lose sight of the rest of the experience where the operation may or may not fall down. And I think that is the biggest drawback. They don't own the whole process, and we don't necessarily have buy-in across the entire organization to fix the whole process. Again, I just delivered a report for one of my clients, and looking at it, they have a broken sales process. They have some marketing challenges, but they have a broken sales process, which could be fixed in a matter of days, really change the number of leads that can convert it substantially. But they have to be able to embrace that and say they want to do that.
Yeah, and it depends, different laws of gravity apply to different businesses. This is one of the things that CEOs for the 5 to 75 million, I don't know whether that's an SMB exactly, but let's just, for the sake of argument, call it an SMB, 5 to 75 million. It's weird. They think they know the customer. And maybe they did know the customer when they started the business, but they've become a little bit, as the business grew, they've become a little bit removed from it. And it's like, going back to the 80-20 thing, I've seen businesses before where if you're doing $40 million with percent of your house file and $20 million and $10 million, I can't get the math right, $10 million with 80% of your house file, it's like, for the hyper responsives, you could have a customer experience that's the equivalent of being seduced. And for everybody else, it's the customer experience equivalent to a quickie. Like a quickie is amazing and being seduced is awesome too, but it's just like, you have to understand what the customer wants, and you have to build a business around that. And you have to, in terms of the law of unintended consequences there, if you try and, dial up one at the expense of the other, there are going to be some unhappy campers. And so you kind of have to be strategic about how you grow that business.
I like that metaphor there. It's not one
Yeah,
I.
let's not extend that metaphor at all because it can go in a bad place.
Well, I mean,
It's memorable.
Yeah, it is 100%.
Bruce, in your book, you talk about retailers focusing on the wrong things. Can you talk a little bit about that? What are some of those wrong things that
Well,
retailers
and,
focus?
and so much of it is retail marketers. We get so caught up in these crazy vanity metrics and getting them to the 2 decimal points and saying how accurate they are. And that's not how light works. You need to get to where you're about 80% sure about what your next decision is and pull the trigger and see what happens. And then course correct from there. The things that I see in companies that are so frequently is no one is willing to admit they're wrong. No one is willing they made a mistake. No one is saying that we tried it, we tested it, and it failed. And I will tell you, I run gigantic testing programs, hundreds of millions of dollars in testing. And what I've seen is there's a golden ratio. There's about a third of your tests win, about a third of them are kissing your sister. It's like, okay. And a third of them are complete and utter dogs. And if you have a batting rate of 90% of the tests you run are winning, you're not trying hard enough. You're not taking big enough swings. But you also have to be able to embrace the fact that you're going to fail at stuff. And that's the biggest thing that companies aren't willing to do. They're not willing to say that things didn't work. And so they end up with these zombie programs that stick around forever.
Well, Harry, is there something that you consistently see that really distinguishes a leader from somebody who is going to succeed versus somebody who's not? Somebody who you think can actually grow the business, or somebody who is maybe putting on a good suit for the interview?
Okay, so I'm going to give you Warren Buffett's answer because I subscribe to this. I'm like, okay, if it's good enough for Warren Buffett, it's good enough for me. But Warren Buffett, I've heard him explain this. By the time somebody actually gets to me, they're an A player. And they were number one in their class at Harvard, or they worked at BCG for, 10 years. And they're just incredibly smart, hypothesis-driven, very business-oriented folks. And so Warren Buffett would say, if I have a final 4 candidates, right, I'm going to talk to all of them separately for 90 minutes and just have a conversation with them. Do they understand the macro economy? Do they understand microeconomic concepts? Do they understand the business environment, planning and forecasting and logistics and supply chain and financial markets? And are they basically put together to understand cause and effect in business? Do they think like a general manager? That's really what Warren Buffett goes after. And then Warren Buffett, this is the part I love. Warren Buffett would say, okay, so I have 4 candidates here, John, Paul, George, and Ringo. Of these 4 candidates, John, Paul, George, and Ringo, which one would I want 10% of his earnings in perpetuity? Assuming he didn't have the richest parents or didn't win the lottery or whatever, who would I want 10% of that person's earnings in perpetuity? Bruce is a phenomenal example of this. You could throw Bruce in a pile of whatever, and he's going to come out smelling like a rose, because that's just Bruce, right? I don't know why it is, but it is, right? So who would I want 10% of their earnings in perpetuity? And then the kicker is, who would I pay 10% in perpetuity? So now I'm in a long position and a short position, 10% in perpetuity, assuming I get to keep the spread, right? That makes it easy to knock out number 4 and to elevate number 1. And of the final 2, you do the same thing. And then you work through that rubric for the final 2. I like people who they have a teachable point of view on business. The only way you get a teachable point of view on business, like, you tend not to get it from books. You tend to learn that stuff from experience. And I like people who look at the customer and they understand how the company makes money and what the business is about and who the business is for. And, what's the unique selling proposition? Why should that customer do business with that firm versus any option available to them, including doing nothing? And they have a process and pages of a playbook, and you get a sense for that as you talk to them. That's 5% of the people in the industry, tops.
If I can just add on to what Harry said, there's a couple of things I've always looked for in people in hiring. One is being fearless. You so much want the person who said, nope, I'll figure it out, as opposed to, I don't know how to do that. That's not teachable. And so it's just not. You have it or you don't. You have that level of competence. The other thing is that you want to be fearless, but not foolhardy. You don't want to go out making bets for the sake of making bets. You want to make educated bets, and you need to make sure that the rigor is there to make sure that you're doing something that you have a really good chance of winning at, not guaranteed, but a good chance at winning at.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But like I will say for anybody listening out there, like I specialize in placing e-commerce executives, ideally those who are going to come in and run the P&L. And the reason I do that is because it's like math, honestly. So this is the closest thing I ever get to a sales pitch about me and what I do. The premise of my relationship with a client is that you're going to hire somebody like Bruce through me. And at the end, whatever you pay Bruce, I'm going to make up $250,000 a year. You're going to owe me $50,000 for Bruce. Last I checked, that's a lot of money, right? So if somebody has 10% EBITDA margins, you got to sell $500,000 worth of merch to cover that nut. Well, that's a lot of merch. And so the only way my fee teases out is if the fee is lost in the rounding of the incremental value that the person drives in the role. And so I have to go through life understanding what my target client values. So I do a lot of business with private equity people, and private equity people, they like businesses that operate efficiently with debt. That's the premise of private equity. So if you go into work with a private equity backed firm, that's what you're getting into. And so, well, what does that mean? Well, they like good cash flow, and they like growing revenue, and they like pricing power, and they like a diverse customer base. I'm making this up. They like favorable cost structure. They like a lack of revenue volatility. These are the things they like. And so I'm constantly interviewing marketers and e-commerce executives around what they do all day and their connection to those things. As if there's no visible salient connection between what they do all day and how they drive those things that I just mentioned, then I'm not going to be able to sell them for 20% of their first year base salary to the private equity hiring committee. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
As you said, it's simple math.
And so for me, the whole Thomas Edison, there's a gazillion ways not to invent a light bulb. There's a million ways not to close a search. But it starts with, I don't mean to flatter Bruce, but honestly, this is good. Because when Bruce was a full-time person, Bruce would hear from me all the time. So it starts with a person like Bruce, who's all of those things in a bag of chips that I just mentioned. And then this is weird, but maybe it's worth knowing for your audience. For the Bruces of the world, I'm basically a business broker. Clients of the world, I'm basically a car salesman or a real estate agent. So it's my job to line up Bruce, John, Paul, George, and Ringo, and they test drive as many as they want until they make a purchase. But what Bruce wants to know, if he's a candidate, him, John, Paul, George, and Ringo, is would I invest my own money in that business? Why are the company best days ahead of it? Does it have favorable underlying economics and so on like that? So that's what A players want to know.
It's funny you say that the favorable economics. I was working in the boating industry briefly, and what I found out was every year the average age of a boat owner gets older by 6 months. I was like, oh, that's not a good number. So it's not a growing market. I was like, okay, this is not necessarily the place to pin the rest of my career.
That's interesting.
It's so interesting. And also for Harry saying that you've learned by doing what you do. You didn't come into this as a school trained recruiter, executive recruiter, specializing in digital marketing. And so you've learned on the job over time from people like Bruce, from your clients on the other side. Bruce, how did you acquire your level of expertise? Was it the same way?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it is also learned by doing. One piece of advice I would give to any marketing executive is stay close to the front. This market changes too damn fast. And it's not stay close to the front and be a market manager, because that's just going to drive your A players away. You don't want, but you need to be able to stay close to the front to be able to ask smart questions and to be able to understand how things work so you can fit into your worldview, so you can spot those opportunities. And if you don't, you're going to become obsolete super fast.
Right.
Yeah. Leadership by questions. I'm a big fan of Socrates for both teaching and learning. So being on the front, but not looking over the shoulder, but asking the questions.
Well, kind of guiding the discussion by asking the right questions and making sure everyone knows what the goal is. And then we all link arms and say, yes, this is the goal. And how do we achieve this? It's not vanity metrics. It's how do we drive sales?
Well, and how do you help your team distinguish between something that's a trend that is probably going to die or is not very profitable and something that is actually valuable, something that's going to become a part of culture that you really do need to double down on and invest in?
Yeah,
For
part of
instance.
it you don't know until you test and you try. I mean, one of the things that I will say, and I was looking through some of the notes before this, is like, what have you tried? Or everyone said, this is the next new thing. And you're like, I don't know that influencers, right? So that, and I know I've had some incredible wins with influencers and so many more that have just fallen completely flat. And so it's a matter of, you have to test it. You have to go out there and look. I will say that I am happiest when I'm proven wrong about something, that we test it and it wins. In my past engagements, it's direct mail. I hate direct mail. I hate it, hate it, hate it. But I found that direct mail for new mover programs actually works. So I embrace the shit out of it. And so it's do it, test it, measure it, have a measurement plan going in. And if it doesn't hit the metrics, kill it. And that's the thing that so many companies don't do. Again, I reference zombie programs. It's that people don't have the discipline to go and actually kill something.
So
I was just going to say they get stuck on the sunk cost. They get stuck on the labor they've already invested in it, their own ego time, and
what they spoke to the board of
politics.
directors, right? And what they promised. And if it didn't deliver, you have to be able to say, it's a dog, let's move on, and then bring on the next new thing.
Even Clive Davis, not everything was a hit.
Yeah.
well, you both talked about your careers, and I'm just kind of wondering, what have you both seen in terms of leadership that's changed over the past few decades? Has anything really changed that, or has something stayed the same that surprised you?
I would say for sure, if you can't describe what you do as a process, you don't know what you're doing. That's like the biggest thing. I mean, as recently as 5 years ago, I would ask somebody how they got a certain number. How'd you get that open rate? How'd you get that increase in traffic? How'd you lower that bounce rate? And they could tell me, what they did, but they didn't describe it in granular detail as a process. And in the future, like that's how you're going to use agents. And a lot of people haven't figured that out. I've spent probably last 9 months learning about AI, and it took a while, by the way, to figure out, okay, this is the difference between, chat, like Claude chat versus Claude code. And this is what an agent does versus this is what a product would do if you built the product. And it's like, okay, so what's the business result? How does the customer feel better about themselves because of that business result? And now how do you reverse engineer? How does that reality inform what you do with the AI? Okay, right there, there's a whole lot of abstraction in what I just said. And people are going to have to get better at using their abstract reasoning capabilities to unpack all of that stuff. A lot of people don't have it. And even worse, I feel badly for them. They're not aware that they don't have it. So I posted this on LinkedIn, right? I don't know if you can see this, but I posted this on LinkedIn because I saw this on some UX blog and I was fascinated with it. Here's the business value of an analytical initiative, and here's the difficulty. So here you have descriptive analytics, what happened. Here you have diagnostic analytics, why did it happen? Here you have the event, and over here you have predictive analytics, what will happen. And now over here you have prescriptive analytics, how can you make it happen? Well, the answer for most candidates that I interview is, what are you talking about? I just told you what my bounce rate is. It's like, yeah, okay. Now, what does it mean when you try and bucketize it into this? And are you going to use a product that you develop with Claude Code or an agent? Paint me a picture of what happens when you have half as many people and twice as much shit to do in your business. And most people, they just can't process that.
Yeah.
Y'all can. Most people that I work with cannot. And so they have some work to do. Change.
Yeah, I think Deanne and I realize, and I'm sure Bruce and you, of course, Harry, you get out into, quote, the real world outside of those of us that have to utilize these AI tools as a way to translate and intermediate, and you have to have that skill set. But so many people don't. I think it's our job to help them along.
But along those lines of what Harry laid out, you need to be able to think 2 and 3 steps ahead of where you are to be able to go and be able to navigate this effectively. Otherwise, you're going to step in it multiple times. And getting back to your original question about how things have changed, I think the level of patience has shrunk. And the results has shrunk dramatically. I mean, I had the client recently asked me, what can you do tomorrow that's going to change my business? I was like, tomorrow's a hard push, but it's okay. And I had an answer. The level of patience, but also the level of change and I touched on this earlier, the level of change in the environment that technology is fundamentally changed, especially AI technology. It changes like yesterday, right? And the day before, and 3 weeks ago, it was a different thing than it is today. It's changing so fast. You can't get married to a technological solution. You have to realize they're all transient.
AI has broken Moore's law. Yeah, we're forced to move faster to keep up with it.
How has it impacted the quality of marketing in your view? Or has it impacted it?
I think it has impacted the quantity of marketing more than it has the quality of marketing. And I see what you see as a lot of mediocre marketers generating mediocre marketing at scale. A lot of stuff's being pushed out that really probably never should have saw the light of day. And so you see a lot of AI slop that's being pushed out as marketing. And that's, I think, problematic. I think that it is an incredible tool. But I like to think about a lot of the AI agents and the AI tools that we're using today as a junior level marketer. That really interesting, the ideas it comes up with, but double check everything. I just had it happen the other day with me for a client. I had to run some reporting and I had to go back and it's like, okay, hallucinated that number. All right, pull it back and let's take a look.
Well, Starbucks lost a whole country because they didn't proofread.
That's a problem. If you rely on it too much, it'll bite you in the butt.
Right, right. Do you think that good marketing and good hiring is going to get lost in the sheer volume of average? Or is it going to be harder to find those good people to see in the algorithm the good marketing campaigns because there's so much average out there? I personally find it in my feed in LinkedIn. I see more and more of the crap and I have to go looking for the valuable stuff a little bit more often and a little bit harder. I don't know if you're seeing that or if you are still able to find with the same amount of effort, the good stuff, for lack of a better term.
You want to talk about the people first, Harry?
Yeah. So the confession that I make is that whenever I have an interesting idea or with somebody that I'm talking to, which is 5 hours worth of A players every single day on the telephone, I have a stack of 5x7 cards and I write the ideas down. So I have recipe card folders or files, these boxes around here filled with it. And so while you were talking, I pulled this up. So people will call me and they'll say, what's going on in the market? And, how do you account for the growth in fractionals and et cetera? So they all want answers. And so sometimes I have to write down the answer to know what I'm going to say. So here's the answer to your question. It just happened to be here on a 5x7 card. Okay. This is from last year, but I think this still applies. Call bullshit on this if you want. Number 1, growth in number of executives who are okay with interim, part-time, and fractional roles is leading to situationships. Mm-hmm. So 90 days, 6 months, that's a situation. It's like dating, right? You're not married. It's a situationship where it may or may not, there may or may not be a there. It's kind of a situationship. Right. So situationships are leading to checklist type marketing. 80-20, you want to go there and you want to go. Most people, maybe not Bruce, but like most of the fractionals and interims that I encounter, it's all about checklist kind of marketing. And whatever it is they do, it's like, I want to have 80% of the impact with 20% of the crap and get to the low hanging fruit and the fruit that's lying on the ground because that's all I'm going to have time for. And plus I want the referral and, the happy client reference to help me get the next thing. So these marketers go in and they have an understanding of what's the best for the brand in the long term, but they're not going to do it. They're very short term oriented because it's a situationship. That's how that works. And that may or may not improve the client KPIs, but it's not super clear what those companies are doing long term, right? And so you have to ask, what's the long-term future of the problem the marketer is trying to solve? So if you say you want a $100 million business, what's preventing us from being the $100 million business, Are we making a sale to get a customer? Are we getting a customer to make a sale? How does it come to pass that the customer, when we are a $100 million thing, feels better about themselves because of their relationship with our brand? They feel morally superior. They feel safer. They trust us. They feel more secure in their lives because of their relationship with the brand. You have to kind of think through those stuff. This is why I think it's important to understand the entire operating model of the firm and the underlying economics of the firm too, is you really have to understand the constraints. It's easy. It's like the Jerry Seinfeld when he's renting a car, it's like, it's easy to take numbers. It's easy to reserve a car. It's easy to say you want to be $100 million business. It's the actually putting together the business model and staffing the team around that's the hard part. Making sure that you have the right vendors, the right suppliers, the right tech stack, the right finance stack, et cetera. So the interim and fractional thing, it's not leading to short-termism, but it's a self-reinforcing loop where people will come to Bruce and they'll say, what can you do for me today? What can you do for me this month? And he's like, well, I might be able to, he didn't say this, but this is, I know the type. I might be able to treat the symptom, but I won't be able to cure what caused the symptom. And those are two different things.
Yeah, I guess that to your point, with a short-term engagement, you don't have the ability to fix everything. But as in my typical engagement is always a full-scale marketing review. I'll dig into everything and tell you everything that is wrong that needs to be fixed and give you a roadmap to fix it, whether or not I can execute it. And so to the point earlier about fixing a broken sales process that needs to be fixed, A, that's not a marketing fix, and B, it's not something that I'm going to be able to fix in my 3 to 6 month engagement, but it's something that absolutely needs to be done because it's going to change the trajectory of the company. It's whether or not you can deliver it.
Yeah, or worse, in 6 months, you can't build the relationships necessary to get the VP of sales to go along with your thing. They just think, well, if I wait Bruce out, he'll be gone and, I'll go back to laying in my career hammock.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
I love the career hammock.
Yes. Well, I'm wondering, what's the difference between companies that stay relevant for decades? I mean, we see companies, I personally love Von Maur, for example. They've been around for 150 years, since the dawn of electricity.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a company like that and a company that just kind of slowly becomes disconnected from their customers and becomes irrelevant?
Having worked for AOL for a long time early in my career and seeing the company slowly become irrelevant, having firsthand knowledge there.
My neighbor still has an AOL email.
I still have some friends that work there, so I have to be careful how I tread. You have to be able to answer hard questions about your own company and question yourself about where you're going and be able to make difficult decisions. If you can't do that, you're going to be stuck making a better buggy whip for the few people that are going to buy it for you.
That's great advice. Harry, what do you think?
I would take what he said and I would bolt on. You have to decide whether or not you're going to be in the buggy whip business or the transportation business. And it kind of goes back to this Jeff Bezos thing. It's like people ask Jeff Bezos what's going to change in 10 years. And he says, what's not going to change in 10 years. So people will only pay for that which they cannot or will not do for themselves. So in my business, which is weird because it's just me. So I'm just one knucklehead working from home, but it's like I'm at the intersection of 1099 and W-2, situational and ongoing like demand for talent. And those buckets change all the time. But in 10 years, Bruce is still going to be working.
Yeah.
And in 10 years, I'd like to be a part of his life and placing him, whether that's in a full-time thing or a part-time thing, on-site, remote, partial remote, it doesn't really matter. And I think in 10 years too, the A players are going to have such an impact on the company that you're going to build an entire organization around a small number of people who really matter. That's what I think. As I read somewhere a couple of years ago that the Rolling Stones have 600 people in their worldwide organization. There's only really 3 people in the Rolling Stones that matter. And then they have a manager and they have somebody who runs merchandising and like another piece of their business that they've done business with for decades. So it's 600 people minus the 5 who matter. And everybody in the organization revolves around that. So in the future, it's like Hollywood. There will be Quentin Tarantino And then he knows the scripts consultants and the location scouts and the cameramen and the grip people. And nobody knows more about how to make a Bruce Millard production than Bruce Millard. So Bruce Millard is going to have the vendors, and some private equity firm will say, we have this company in our portfolio. What do we do with it? I don't know. We need a Bruce Millard production. And they get Bruce to come in and pitch them. And then Bruce's involvement gets greenlit, just like Hollywood. And then Bruce engages the people around. That's where I think we're headed.
If I can diverge just a little bit and talk about both hiring process and management process, for me, if I can just touch on it, there's like 6 things in it. One is hire the absolute best talent you possibly can find and can afford. You got to get the A players. B, you give them clear direction on what needs to be done. And I say direction, it's not paint by numbers, it's strategic direction. What do you want to have them do? C, you make sure they have the resources they need to be successful. You can't starve them, you got to feed them. Then you have to clear the hurdles from them, because the organizations are going to throw hurdles in their way and try to get them to stop or slow down, because everyone hates change. Then you correct in private, you praise in public. And so many leaders miss this, and it's so painful to watch at times. And then the last one, and this is the most important lesson, you get the F out of the way. Because if you give real clear direction, if you give them an idea or a strategy that's a 6, and they're really A players, they're going to take your idea and they're going to try a 6 into a 10 because they want to own it and they want to win. And
They're going to put.
I got taught this early in my career, and it has served me well for the last 20 years.
Well, and to both your points earlier, they're going to push the capabilities and resources as far as they can without breaking it, because they're A players.
Then that's the hardest thing for a $5 to $75 million DTC, business owner to do, because she doesn't have a lot of money. She really, like, every dollar is this precious thing, and she wants force multipliers all over the business.
Yep.
And it's hard. It's very challenging to be a fractional. I think it's a lot harder to be a fractional or an interim or a project-based CMO than a full-time CMO.
It has its challenges, but it has its rewards as well. It pays pretty well.
Yeah.
Harry, I wonder if you could share a quality that you think will always separate an A player, as you call it, from everybody else, something that people should cultivate.
It's not one, but it's a couple. So number one, they have to be business oriented. You have to love business. You have to love capitalism. You have to. You can't be conflicted in any way about whether capitalism is evil or marketing is evil, or you have to love it. It has to be a religion for you. You have to freaking love it and want to do it and be proud of it, so you can be filled with enthusiasm, and other people they'll catch that, right? So you have to be business oriented. You have to love it. You have to be a dyed in the wool, hardened capitalist, full stop. You have to be hypothesis driven. I think it's a huge one. I stole that from a McKinsey book, which I think it's true. You have to, here's what I think is going to happen if we do this. If this change happens in the market, here's what's going to happen to the customer. And here's what's going to happen to those trends. So number 2 is hypothesis driven. Number 3, and I'll stop here, is analytically biased. This idea that there's nothing as devastating to an opinion as a number. You can set the number aside because it feels good or whatever. You don't have to make every decision based on numbers. But you have to understand what the data says. And to the poster that I showed you a little while ago, you need to kind of be able to get inside the numbers a little bit and find out what the leading and lagging indicators of success are, and why those are the way they are.
If I can add 2 things to your list, and one is kind of a derivation of what you said. One is intensely curious, and you said hypothesis driven. You have to have a sense of wonder about the business and wonder what's going to happen if I do something different. And then the second one is you have to love change, really love change. And I love to see where I've been. I love to see the impact I'm making in business. That's why I get up in the morning and do this. It's because I love what I do. And if you don't do that, it's going to show.
Well, Bruce, we'll end with you, but I would love to put in a little plug for your book. It's called Cutting Through the Bullshit, A Marketing Leader's Guide to Surviving and Thriving in Chaos. And I personally think it's one of the best marketing books I've seen, because it really does. It's both strategic and tactical. It's not philosophical and woo-woo.
There's
no bullshit.
There's no bit. It really does cut through to the heart of what what is wrong with the industry, and it has practical, meaningful instruction on how to fix it. I wonder if you could just share a couple of teasers about your book to entice people to go out and
Sure.
buy it.
One of the things I'd say is, and we talked a little bit about AI, it can really accelerate strong thinking. And if you use it that way, it can really help come up with a bunch of concepts, and it can help push you beyond where your head is at, but it can also produce nonsense at scale. It's really way too easy for it to do that. So it's something that we all need to be careful of. Real strategy makes real choices. It means stopping doing some things. A fake strategy builds a bunch of decks that no one's going to read after they present for the first time. And the last one I'll leave you with really is, if the customer wouldn't say it, believe it, or understand it, maybe don't put it in the campaign.
Right.
And if it doesn't sound like something your customer would say or do or believe, leave it in the boardroom.
Well, thank you both so much.
I really enjoyed it. Harry, thank you so much for coming on. I so appreciate you.
A great joy having you both on. Really respect you both and appreciate your points of view and your sensitivity to the roles and responsibilities and the human beings in the process.
Okay, kids.
See you guys.
Stay awesome.